Have you ever imagined that a tampon could be the cause of a rift in a relationship that is about to get married? Sounds petty, right? But listen to this story before you rush to judgment, because sometimes it's the little things seemingly harmless that are the last straw. This is the story told by a 32-year-old man who lives with his fiancée, a 27-year-old woman he is madly in love with. They have been together for almost a year, and according to him, their life together is really going well. They share the housework fairly, communicate better than many other couples they know, and on the surface, it seems like nothing can disrupt this harmony. Until the trash can in the bathroom speaks up. Sounds strange, right? A trash can, or rather what was on top of it, has become the center of a heated argument, prompting one man to turn to Reddit for advice. It all started when he noticed that his fiancée was regularly throwing away menstrual products, used tampons and pads without covering them up. The bloody items were lying on top of the open trash can, right in the bathroom that their guests used when they visited. No wrapping paper, no cover-up, just there, exposed and very real. Very vivid. And if you're picturing it, imagine this again. You're a guest walking into a clean, modern, softly lit lemongrass-scented bathroom, and boom, right next to the toilet you find a red tampon speckled with dried blood and maybe a small clot. How would you react? Surprised? Confused? Or did you lose interest in playing board games that night? Back to the guy in the story. He is not the type of person who is old-fashioned or misogynistic. On the contrary, he worked in the medical field throughout his 20s, did not hesitate to buy sanitary napkins, was not embarrassed by the topic of menstruation, and even shared that he was completely comfortable with having sex when his girlfriend was on her period. He was not disgusted or afraid of blood. What he felt uncomfortable with was the way those products were discarded, openly without covering them up, and especially in a space that other people also used. He thought it was a sensitive matter and should not be exposed like that, especially when guests came to the house. So with all gentleness and tact, he asked his fiancée to wrap the tampon or sanitary napkin in toilet paper before throwing it away. A very simple act, according to him, that his ex-lovers had done, and he had never had to mention it. But this time it was different. The fiancée not only refused but also reacted quite harshly. She believed that if she had to endure the pain, fatigue, and all the inconveniences every month, then others, including him and the guests, should accept seeing the consequences. There was nothing to hide. There was nothing to be ashamed of. Menstruation was natural. Women did not need to apologize for their bodies. At this point, you may start to feel one way or the other. Maybe you think this guy is being too sensitive. Maybe you start to think that the girl is deliberately punishing others for what she went through. But wait, it doesn't stop there. On a recent occasion, when the two were preparing to host a game night at his house with friends, he decided to quietly resolve the issue. Not with words, not with an argument, just with a piece of toilet paper. He pulled out some paper, gently placed it on top of the bloody product on top of the trash can, just to hide it from the guests. That was it. Not thrown away, not changed, just covered it up a bit. But when the party ended, his fiancée faced him with a not-so-gentle look. She had checked the trash can after the guests had left, which revealed that she had left it there on purpose, and cared whether it was covered or not. She accused him of being ashamed of her, of breaking the agreement and disrespecting her choice. Now things had come to a head. This was no longer about tampons or trash cans. This was about respect, about individual rights, about the boundaries of shared living space, and above all, about how two people in love deal with the smallest differences in everyday life. He loved her very much. It was evident in the way he tried to restrain himself, to find gentle solutions and not criticize. But now something seemingly small is becoming a wall of separation, and he's forced to ask Reddit, and now you, the Judgy Tales audience, a seemingly simple yet weighty question. Is he wrong to just want a little privacy, a little cover? Not out of disgust, but out of a desire to preserve dignity and comfort for everyone. What do you think? What would you do if you were in this situation? And how would you react if you walked into a friend's bathroom and saw something like that? Don't rush to answer because there are more layers to the story than you might think. It's not just about blood. It's about patience, about personal boundaries, and about seemingly small disagreements that can destroy a future marriage. They were a seemingly perfect couple, at least in the eyes of their friends, family, and even themselves looking back on their first few months together. He was 32, a former healthcare worker, calm, polite, loved neatness, and respected personal boundaries. She was 27, intelligent, opinionated, strong-minded, and unafraid to express her views on personal rights and women's rights. They had been in love for a while before deciding to move in together, an important step in their relationship that both hoped would open the door to marriage. When they first moved in together, everything seemed so smooth that they almost couldn't believe it. The cleaning schedule was clearly and seriously divided like an unspoken contract. He cooked, she mopped the floor. He took out the trash, she did the laundry. They never let the dishes pile up overnight, and they never argue over forgetting to buy toilet paper or take the clothes out of the washer to dry. If one of them has a long day, the other will take the initiative to cook or cut down on the cleaning schedule, without complaining or demanding. It's a smooth partnership, like two pieces of a puzzle that fit together perfectly without sharp edges or cracks. Their friends often express surprise at how well a young couple can work together. There are no heated arguments about dirt, and neither has to put up with a lazy or inconsiderate person. They both tend to be perfectionists, respect each other's personal space, and know how to regulate their emotions in their daily lives together. They even joke that they're like a national cleaning team, synchronized and precise down to the beat. He proudly says that they communicate better than 90% of other couples, and he's not just talking. When one of them feels something is wrong, they sit down, discuss, and find a solution. No one overwhelms the other, no one torments the other. Their living space also reflects that, a bright, fully furnished apartment, clean in every corner. Green potted plants are placed in the right place, warm decorative lights, books are neatly arranged, towels are changed regularly, the floor is always clean. Even the bathroom, a place that few people pay attention to, is kept equally tidy with hand soap, scented candles, and a carefully arranged box of personal hygiene items. They have turned that apartment into a real home, a place where anyone who enters feels comfortable and at home. Or, almost, because in that perfection, there is still a small detail, very small, but smoldering like a faint crack that no one has noticed. It is not about money, not about living habits, and certainly not about love. It was the trash can. More specifically, the use of the trash can in the bathroom, a place both of them used and a place where guests occasionally stopped by. Not every day they had guests, but when they did, it was for important occasions, game nights, potlucks, friend gatherings, happy moments that no one wanted to be interrupted by blood. This is where the differences in perspective, hidden under the veneer of harmony, began to surface. He noticed that his girlfriend had a habit of throwing used tampons, sometimes bloody and containing blood clots, directly into an open trash can without wrapping them. It was not unusual or thoughtless behavior, at least not in her mind. To her, it was a natural action, nothing to hide, nothing to be ashamed of. But to him, a former medical professional, accustomed to keeping the living environment clean and aesthetic, the sight left a slight shock, not necessarily out of disgust but out of surprise. Like a light touch that hit a sensitive spot. And to anyone else who was not used to the sight, especially a guest, the shock was doubly so. He didn't say anything the first time he saw it. He understood that menstruation was a natural part of life, and not something to be hidden out of shame. But he also believed that there were things that were natural but should still be put in their proper context. He began to think, should he make a suggestion? Should he gently suggest that things be more discreet, not for his sake, but for the sake of the innocent guests who might be visually assaulted? And so he chose the gentlest possible suggestion. No judgment, no criticism, just a suggestion. Could you wrap it in toilet paper before throwing it away? A small action, but to her, it was like a request to appease others with your sacrifice, something she was not willing to do. The disagreement began there. Small, but like a crack in a glass, it began to spread little by little. Each time there was another product lying exposed on top of the trash can. And even though they both kept their cool, still had dinner together, still watched Netflix and went for walks, inside he, and maybe her, were unspoken questions. Was this a sign of a difference in values? Or just a small misunderstanding that would pass? Was he being too sensitive or was she being too stubborn? And if they were both right from their perspective, then who would be the first to give in? Everything would have been just mildly unpleasant, if not for that fateful game night. That day they invited a group of close friends over to play board games, drink a few glasses of wine and laugh together. Everything was prepared perfectly. Snacks were on the table, soft music played in the background, and the apartment was lit with warm yellow lights. The atmosphere was cheerful and comfortable, just the way they both loved it. But just a few minutes before the guests arrived, he walked into the bathroom to check one last time. And then, there it was again. Right on the open mouth of the trash can, there was a used tampon stained with blood, unwrapped, uncovered like a silent declaration, "I exist and I don't need to hide." He stood still for a few seconds. He felt a little confused. Not disgust, never disgust, but a feeling of awkwardness. He knew that in a moment one of his friends, maybe his best friend's shy girlfriend, maybe one of her coworkers, would walk into that bathroom and see this. No explanation, no cover, just the dark red tampon lying there, like a silent bloodstain in the clean apartment. He didn't want to argue, didn't want to make a big deal out of it. And most of all, he didn't want to embarrass anyone. Not his girlfriend, not himself, and certainly not the guests who were about to walk through the door. So he chose the most neutral solution he could think of. Take some toilet paper, gently fold it into a small square and place it on top. Not throw it away. Not touch the product. Just cover it up a little. A quick, silent action as if it were no big deal. And then he'd come back out, continuing to greet the guests with his usual smile, as if everything was going smoothly. The evening was wonderful. Everyone laughed and argued excitedly over Uno cards and sweet cocktails. No one mentioned the bathroom. No one seemed to notice. He thought that the small gesture had saved a potentially awkward situation. But he didn't expect it, she did. As soon as the guests left, while he was clearing the dishes, she walked into the kitchen with a cold gaze. No smile. No thanks for dinner. Just a cold question cutting through the air. "You covered my tampon, didn't you?" He looked up, pausing slightly. The question wasn't a confirmation. It was an accusation. He nodded slightly, intending to explain. But she continued, her voice filled with disappointment and anger. "Are you that ashamed of me? You said you respected me, so this is your respect." He tried to stay calm, explaining that he just wanted to make her feel comfortable. That he didn't mean to offend her or to be critical or creepy. It was simply that for people who weren't used to it, the sight could be awkward, and he didn't want to make it so. He also reminded her that he used to work in medicine, was familiar with blood, and had never had problems with periods. But she didn't listen. For her, it wasn't a matter of aesthetics. It was a matter of principle. She took his covering up the tampon as an indirect expression of shame, as if he was saying that a woman's body should be hidden, that she should disguise herself to fit into society's standards of politeness. She had to endure her period every month, she said, and endure the pain and fatigue. What right did anyone have to demand that she cover up what was left? For her, it was a silent protest. Leaving the tampon there was a reminder that women don't have to be beautiful, clean, and comfortable all the time. Especially in their own living space. Their argument gradually turned into a battle of opinions. He believed that privacy was not discrimination. She believed that concealment was discrimination. And worst of all, he realized that she had deliberately checked after the guests had left. That showed that, at least this time, she knew what she was doing and was testing him. He wanted to know how he would react. And when he accidentally covered it up, even with a piece of toilet paper, she saw it as a betrayal of trust. Not a betrayal of love, but a betrayal of position. He was confused. He felt that this was going too far. A small thing that should have been settled in one conversation had now become a symbol of power, of prejudice, of ego. And what scared him most was that he had no idea how to get out. Because every neutral solution he suggested, from wrapping it in paper to buying a trash can with a lid, was rejected by her. Not because it was inconvenient, but because it hurt her feelings. And now he was at a crossroads. Continue to stay silent and endure, or speak out, and risk damaging their relationship that was approaching marriage. In the end, he chose Reddit. Not to expose or vilify, but to ask a question. Am I wrong to just want a clean, unobtrusive space for others, even if that means covering up a natural part of my partner? It was a simple question, but one that was fraught with conflicts between emotions, ethics, personal rights, and respect in a shared living space. And now, it's your turn to judge. And now let's sit down and analyze, not just the actions but the emotions, the arguments, and the perspectives of the two people in this story. Because clearly this is no longer about a tampon. This is about the limits of empathy, about personal rights in public spaces, and about the line between respect and compromise. First, let's look at the man. He's not disgusted by menstrual blood. On the contrary, he used to work in the medical field, is willing to buy things for his girlfriend, and is not afraid to have sex when she's on her period. That shows. This is not the type of man who is old-fashioned, overly sensitive, or lacking in sex education. He understands and respects the naturalness of women's bodies. The problem is, not all guests are like him. They didn't sign up to see that while washing their hands or fixing their hair in front of the mirror. And so the act of quietly covering up the product, it's actually an attempt to save face for all, not an insult. And what about the woman? In another sense, she's not as crazy or stubborn as many might initially think. To her, tampons aren't just trash. They're evidence of pain, of monthly suffering, of something that society considers disgusting and needs to be hidden. She doesn't want to camouflage it just to make others feel good. To her, the act of wrapping it in paper or using a closed trash can isn't about convenience. It's about bowing to an old standard of politeness, built by a society that's all too familiar with making women feel ashamed of their own bodies. But wait, the question is, does the man really deny the spiritual value behind her actions? Or is he simply looking for a middle ground, to live comfortably in a shared space? That's what makes this conflict so difficult to judge. Because no one is really wrong, but no one is completely right either. And if we look at it more broadly, this is a problem that many young couples face. When two individuals enter the same living space, small actions, from the way they fold their blankets, place their toothbrushes, to throwing out the trash, suddenly become symbols of power, of fairness, of personal stance. What makes a small thing a big deal is not the tampon itself, but the clash of two different value systems, and the fact that neither of them is willing to be the first to give way without feeling like they are losing. So who is right? The one who wants to keep the guests clean and polite? Or the one who wants to affirm that the female body does not need to apologize for its existence? If you ask me, this is a gray area. On one side, there is the desire to live comfortably and civilly in the eyes of outsiders. On the other side, there is the need to be free to express yourself, not feeling like you have to pretend to be comfortable just to fit in. Both have their own pain, and both, if they don't listen to each other, will soon be pushed away by something as innocuous as a piece of toilet paper. And now it's your turn. Do you think this man was wrong to quietly cover up his fiancée's product, just to save face with his friends? Or do you think she took the feminist argument too far in their shared living space? Have you ever been caught in a seemingly small conflict that sparked a silent war between two people in love? Speech balloon, share in the comments. Because who knows, your experience might help someone find a way to resolve things before things go too far. Balance scaled, and as always, remember, at Judgy Tales, every action deserves judgment, even the seemingly smallest ones. And that's the whole story of today's controversy, starting with the tampon, and ending with the brutal confrontation between respect, personal freedom, and how to live together in a relationship. No matter whose side you're on, there's no denying that the smallest things in life can be a reflection of larger cracks in a relationship. So who do you think is being too sensitive? The guy who wants to keep his guests private? Or the girl who wants to protect her position and her body? Is there a compromise that doesn't require either of them to give up their own values? Speech balloon, leave a comment below. You're the final judge. Loudspeaker, and if you find yourself getting lost in the tiny big arguments conflict, don't hesitate to share. Because here, every voice counts. Backhand index pointing right. Don't forget to like if you find today's story thought-provoking. Backhand index pointing right. Subscribe to Judgy Tales so you don't miss out on the more and more addictive dramas from Reddit, from AI confessions to earth-shattering handling. Calendar. Every week we will bring you new stories, more dramatic, more realistic, and always make you wonder, if it were me, what would I do? See you in the next video, and don't forget, studio microphone. Judgy Tales, real stories, real drama, real judgments.